Hey friends of the forest, hope all is well. Dandelion here. Just wanted to tune in, share some thoughts, maybe talk some plants with y'all. So hanging out here in the woods, enjoying this beautiful breeze. And I've been foraging around looking for hen of the woods. Still a little early. We got some rain a day ago, so I'm still a little early. What's up, Natural Mystic? So I'm still a little early on the hen of the woods. I was circling oak trees all day, just looking to see some of them which I had found them under. Hen of the woods happens to often be perennial, or grows out of the same stump for many years. So in the right season, in the right time, you'll find them. This tree that I checked just today, I've found huge amounts of hen of the woods there for years, since I was like 22. So don't always pick every one I find. I think that makes a factor, but they're not out and about yet. Hen of the woods, otherwise known as maitake, Grifola frondosa, is an incredible immunomodulating mushroom and tastes amazing. I can't wait to eat some. I like to chop them and saute them in some pastured butter or coconut oil, or don't cook with olive oil, it's not healthy for you. A high heat oil. And I love using herbs like rosemary and mugwort and sage to spice my mushrooms, so I'm really looking forward to finding some of those. I was also looking for chicken of the woods, and so far nothing. So basically, after the rain, it's good to go about 3 to 4 days after it rains are pretty much the peak time. If you wait till 7 to 12 days, you'll get a lot of bug-ridden mushrooms, especially if it rains again. They'll start to get kind of waterlogged and soggy and gross. So mushrooms are pretty ephemeral. They come up pretty much overnight, sometimes 2 days, and you need to find them in the next couple of days before they become more like bug hotels than your dinner. So those are kind of the transition now into the fall mushrooms. So chanterelle season is over, and now we're looking at mushrooms that grow on trees. And you basically have, with chanterelles, you have the black staining polypore and the Berkeley's polypore. They always seem to come out earlier, and then you get to the point where maitake and chicken of the woods kind of finish it out. Oysters as well finish out the fall season. So look around for those. They'll be out and about, and they make for tasty medicinal eats. I can't say enough about the immunomodulating action of those mushrooms. I mean, they are just good for all people, for everything. If you saw my recent post on allergies, I was mentioning immunomodulators, and I didn't mention them by name, but those medicinal mushrooms, reishi, maitake, chaga, turkey tails, are incredibly important for restoring cellular integrity, and it feels like they swap out your damaged cells. They help your immune system determine which cells are damaged and somehow help you proliferate healthier cells. So that's where it's really good for building allergy immunity and things like that. So they'll be out and about, and check them out. So if anyone has any herbal or foraging questions, or let me know what you've been looking for or finding out there, feel free to do that. I was also walking around observing spicebush, which is one of my favorite native plants, and the berries are around and they're just starting to redden. So I'll eat, maybe 4 to 7 of those when I'm out walking, and that just feels like getting that medicinal magic into my system. Sometimes I'll also pinch off a branch and chew on that like a chew stick. That's really just a great way to get some medicinal compounds into your bloodstream. I also was checking my pawpaw spots, so we're pretty early with the pawpaws, but get ready for some pawpaw posting soon enough. I'm really excited about them. These trees are filled. I might take a trip down south looking at Virginia and Maryland and Virginia in September, October. So if you live in that area, stay tuned. May come down there this weekend. I'll be teaching in Howell, New Jersey, then and Bucks County, and then the following weekend in, where will I be? I know I'm going to be somewhere, but I can't remember right now. So check that out at returntonature.us. Natural Mystic asks, how would I make a tincture from artist conch? Artist conch is usually known as Ganoderma applanatum, which is not the reishi proper, which used to be called Ganoderma lucidium. They just did a lot of arrangement to change the... oh, right, Erkan, thank you. The following weekend in New Brunswick, it's the equinox, I believe. And I'll be enjoying a equinox celebration at the Garden of Healing Saturday, and then Sunday I'll be teaching a class around Rutgers Gardens, so feel free to be in touch if you're in the New Brunswick, New Jersey area. So back to Natural Mystic's question. What I like to do is I'll harvest the Ganoderma mushrooms and I'll slice them when they're fresh, because it's much easier. Take a serrated knife, slice them into slices, and if I'm traveling in the Forage Mobile, which I have been since May, I'll just put them on in a cardboard box on the windowsill, and I'll kind of toss them around until they dry. So that's kind of step one. Now you have these slices. Step two is you break them, you grind them into a powder. So you can do that with a blender or grinder, and then you have kind of chunks or powder, and then you could tincture them from that. So approximately 50 to 70% full. You could use 50% alcohol. That will be sufficient. That is a single extract. You'd leave that for a month, and then you have medicinal mushroom extract. Now, what most of us do is make double extract. That's all my mushroom tinctures have an extra added step of a double extract. For me, I use 80% alcohol, and I make also, then I strain it, I make a decoction from the marc, and then I combine that. So that becomes 50-50, so it's decoction and tincture combined. That's a double extract, and that's really the way to get all the medicinal magic in there. So I highly recommend double extractions. If you're interested in supporting the Return to Nature, I have lots of double extracted medicinal mushrooms as well as other herbal tinctures, so please check it out. Just give us an email at herbalcsa@returntonature.us. We have a full tincture list that we can send you, and would love to serve you. Also do a lot of custom formulations, so if you have any ailments and you'd like some help with a tincture formula or tea blend or both, be in touch. My email is also dan@returntonature.us. Peaches says, do you recommend any books for beginner foragers and herbalists? I think it's a combination of a lot of different books, and if you go on my website, returntonature.us, there I have in the links section, it's called Dan's book list, so all of those are what I recommend. But without 100 books, I would recommend something like Michael Tierra's The Way of Herbs. That's a really good book to start with. That was kind of my introduction. Something like that, which is some herbalism, some medicinal aspects, and some medicine making techniques. Of course, if you want to go further in medicinal medicine making techniques, there's also James Green's book, the Herbal Medicine Maker's Handbook, Rich Ochek's book, Making Plant Medicine. Those are good for actually making some plant medicine preparations. And then for foraging is a totally different genre. Sam Thayer, Wildman Steve Brill, Yule Gibbons. Those are kind of books that are written more like a monograph on one plant, which they talk about the actual foraging. Then, of course, you need some field guides if you want to learn plant identification, so that's a third category. So they're not all in one book. It would be too big of a book and really difficult. So people try to add different parts. But I recommend, a field guide like Audubon Field Guide to Wildflowers, those foraging books as a reference. Also, Arthur Haynes has a great, I think now 2 books, so you can check those out. Ancestral Plants, Volume 1 and 2. And I'll be coming out with a book hopefully in the spring, trying to figure out publishing. That'll be my first foraging book, and that'll be kind of first-hand account of foraging around New Jersey and learning how to rewild myself in such a odd place to do so. So that's all coming up, projects for the fall and the spring. Ancestral Plants is also a great group, which I'm part of on Facebook, so you can come check that out. Lots of plant wisdom on there, so that'll be really fun. Does anyone else have any questions? Feel free to ask. Love to help you get intimate with the plant world. Hanging out here with Solomon seal, which I think is such a really important plant for a food crop. We barely ever talk about that. But that would be an amazing vegetable. It produces this rhizome that's just so sweet and nutty and delicious. It's huge if you get giant Solomon seal going. So if you're a farmer and you want something really unique, try to consider Solomon seal. It would be an awesome plant to grow and offer. It's like water chestnuts, so I love that crunchy, sweet, nutty texture, and they're just amazing. So check those out as well. You're welcome, Peaches. Let's see. I can give you all a little breakdown of what I carry with me when I'm foraging. So I have my backpack and I have my little side bag. One of the things I carry is I'll charge this in the van. This is a phone charger so that I can do these webcasts. Great question, Ivies. Let me go to that instead of showing you my gear. So Ivies says, when's the last time you got sick? Actually, last winter I got a very persistent respiratory purge, which I found to be very spiritually aligned with what was going on with my family, with kind of bringing shadows up to the light. And I felt like it was a huge cleanse because before that I had made my first batch, a gallon of reishi tincture, and my first gallon, that's a lot. It was actually more like 2 gallons, and I was taking it heavy, and I feel like the reishi scraped the toxins out of my body from when I was a child. I was really lymph cleansing, so I was continuing to really pull toxins out of my body, and I felt like during the winter what happened is I got a lot of respiratory gunk out, and it was incredibly heart purifying. I felt like it was a shamanic purge, and so whether that was getting sick or getting well is anybody's guess. But I encourage that. I don't think herbalism is about repressing yourself from feeling pain or trauma. So the goal of an herbalist is not to make your symptoms go away. The goal of an herbalist is to help your symptoms become your teachers and your guide towards purification. And we all have repressed gunk, whether it's physical, emotional, or whether that's the same thing. I happen to believe it is. It's good to purge that out. So like sweating is an example, coughing out mucus is an example, your nose running. These are all ways, bleeding for women specifically, these are all ways that the body cleanses itself, and that's part of the human cycle, and it's a humbling thing. And so before that, it was probably 3 or 4 years since I had a cold or anything like that. Actually, the last time before that I did a neti, I was with a wood fire for about a week straight, and so I felt like my sinuses were just really covered with soot. And so I was at a spring and I did a neti with that. I inhaled the spring water, and it was so cold that brought me to having a 3 to 5 day cold as well. So a lot of it is, for me, lymphatic, respiratory. I smoked cigarettes for a while. I've smoked a heck of a lot of cannabis in my day. I grew up on nasty foods, Hot Pockets and macaroni and cheese and Pepsi and things like that. So I think that as we do our healing, we get to these deeper levels. So we kind of revisit, okay, now I'm healthy, let me revisit the trauma that was when I was 7, or let me revisit the trauma that when I was 3. And we kind of bring that up and out, and that becomes our purge, and we usually call that sickness. And there's nothing wrong with that. Like, if you think the entire medical industry is in the fear of somebody getting a cold or a flu for 3 to 5 days, 90% of vaccinations is about a cold or a flu, not about people getting SARS or swine flu or polio. It's mostly to avoid the common cold, which actually is incredibly important because, as I talk about often, your lymphatic system stores all the heavy metals, toxins, McDonald's, Burger King, sugar, that you've ever consumed, and it's in your lymph system. And the only way to get that out is to kind of do this process where your lymph dumps into your blood, and your blood then turns it into, feces, sweat, urine, and mucus. So that's part of our cleanse when we're willing, when we're ready to go deep into our past, and pull out the codeine, that I used to get. I used to get sinus infections when I was like 8 or 9, and they would give me codeine. I was tripping my face off, and the matter, whatever that matter is still in my lymphatic system. It's still in my lymphatic memory. So as you go in and you're willing to do that deeper cleansing work, you will display symptoms, and it's important to not see them as sick and bad. Those are good. That's getting well. You're purging, you're purifying. That is how to avoid getting cancer, right? And so when we repress and we continue to shut that down, that's when we are maybe staying in the same level of evolution instead of going deeper. So we all have lives full of things that probably never should have been done ever in human history, as far as food, as far as lifestyle. So we're kind of cleansing ourselves from that. Mother Crunchy says, I love hearing people's past and how they got to where they are now. Yeah, feel free. I mean, I'm really always open. I think in sharing is all of our healing. It's really important. I think it's time to turn inside out as a society, which is part of the reason that I do this. And so feel free to ask anything, truly. So does anybody else have any questions? Good questions, by the way. Really appreciate those. Drink spring water, findaspring.com. Get yourself hooked on spring water. Protect those springs. They are sacred and holy and very important. And the people who can help us make springs are dying out, and we need to find those people and have them teach us. By the way, I love the fall. Fall just energizes me. I have so many good nature memories growing up in the fall with the smells, and I just love the smells. I think what it is like rotting leaves. I just love that sour, beautiful smell. Uh-oh, Peaches. Here we go. My opinion on the new vegan trend. I think if you go to the grocery store, and if you're going to be hooked on the grocery store, then a vegan diet makes the most sense, because if you're just choosing from a grocery store, then that is the most ethical. However, once you get local, once you think about the plastic, the fossil fuel consumption, once you go beyond the grocery store, you get out of the grocery store mentality and you start thinking about where things are grown, how they're grown, where they're shipped from, how far away they come. There's a lot more ethical gray area that I think a lot of vegans are unwilling to face. So for me, I really decided that plastic is also harmful to animals. We all know that. Fossil fuel is also harmful to animals. So anything that's shipped from really far away is still killing animals. Not to mention, most vegan food happens to be is grown in monocultures, and those monocultures constantly, the more we buy things, the more they need to chop down the forest to grow those things to meet our market need. We saw this with quinoa, right? Destroyed South American poverty food. As soon as it became a trend in America, of course, the people stopped selling to each other, and they all sold it over to the States, and that caused people to chop down more forest to grow more quinoa. The same thing is happening with palm oil, and we know that with palm oil, and that's a huge issue, so people are out and about saying avoid palm oil. But what we don't realize is the same thing's happening with coconuts, and coconut oil. And we are chopping down the rainforest, which is a diverse habitat with lots of animals in it, to grow more monocultures of coconuts. And that is not according to the standards of vegan ethics. It does kill animals. They are wild animals. They're very important. They're very necessary. And so I've tried to localize my diet as much as I could. So when my friends started having chickens in their backyard and I started raising them and having a hand in that, it really made so much more sense than buying anything in the grocery store. Like Whole Foods is stocking, even though it has a vegan sticker, it's stocking the shelves with things that are full of child slave labor, shipped all over the planet, not ethical, not clean like you would assume just because it has an organic sticker. So basically, I try to eat I eat all organic, but there's still organically allowed pesticides. There's lobbyists against the organic movement who are trying to hijack the organic movement. I believe the legal standard is 80% organic can get you USDA certified. That can mean you have 20% horrible toxins. Nothing is as it seems, and we have to go deeper than the black and white issue of like, are you vegan or killing the planet? That is just simply not true. The question is, are you eating a local diet? And if you're eating a local diet, and it depends on where you live, you will starve to death on a vegan diet. And I know because I've tried for the last 15 years to forage a vegan diet. And if you do math and you understand calories and you understand availability, there's not enough fat and carbohydrates in New Jersey to not import them or to not look to animals. And that's why native people in this area didn't eat a vegan diet. Now, if I was in Southern California and there's avocado trees in the winter, totally different, there's fats that are available. So there's very little fats here except for nuts. And as probably many of you know, I've harvested nuts like a nut ball. I harvested acorns as much as I possibly could last year, and I got like 5 loaves of bread. It was awesome, but you cannot live until next fall, from fall to fall, on 5 loaves of bread. So you have to start thinking, wow, well, how do I survive off the land? And that's what a lot of convenient, privileged people who are aggressive about veganism don't take into consideration, that they're not living off the land necessarily. And that is a question. So what can you grow in your bioregion is different. And I was vegan for about 6 years. I found that my fingernails started to degrade. They had holes in them. I felt malnourished even though I was eating tons of soaked, sprouted nuts, seeds, juices, avocados, etc. But I feel like it's unethical to ship avocados from Mexico to New Jersey, or bananas, that's not the way I want to go. So I want to look locally, and that has been a transitional process for me, and I recommend everybody just consider these things. I don't think there is one black and white answer. So yes, Alkaline is saying the same thing happens with our growing meat consumption. Animal agriculture takes more land. Animal agriculture is not the only other option. I do not eat cows. I don't eat pigs. I don't recommend eating factory farmed animals. It always boils down to people who are vegan who aggressively think that if you look locally to your backyard, that you are suddenly engaging in factory farming. And I'm not. I don't think cows are necessary. I would rather hunt buffalo on wild prairie, which was not being taken over by Whole Foods parking lots, so we can get our vegan food shipped in. So we need to just be mindful that nobody has the clear answers, and the argument is so black and white if you consider that the only other option to talk about is factory farming, which is disgusting. We all think factory farming is disgusting. Animal agriculture is horrible. It's polluting the planet. It's absolutely damaging. So go to your local farmers market, as people are saying. Pretty vagrants, ask if there's any local livestock farms. There are some. There definitely are. Send me a message. There's some, I forget, there's a link. It's like localharvest.com or something like that, has a list of all kinds of local farmers. So I eat mostly vegan, probably 80% vegan, and I supplement with fish on occasion, and chicken a couple times a month. And that's been a new experiment in the last 2 years, and I don't feel like I'll do that forever either. And I'm moving more towards hunting 1 deer a year, and that would get me to the position. I'm talking about bow hunting ethically, respectfully, watching the deer, not sitting in a tree stand, not wearing camouflage. I'm talking about stalking animals in the most ethical way that I can, understanding the population, trying to understand maybe if an animal is harmed in some way and taking that one. And that makes more sense than shipping fats, nuts, seeds, carbohydrates from all over the planet. Those monocultures are damaging, whether they are monocultures of cows or monocultures of coconuts, which is better than monocultures of cows. But then when you're dealing with, what about local roadkill? What about something that's hit by a car that's left on the side of the road versus shipping something from Thailand, and that's the question. So hope that's ruffled people's feathers just enough. I'm always open to talking about it, but don't tell me that factory farming animals is why the vegan argument is superior, because if you're eating locally, that's the best. If you are literally going less than 200 miles in a radius to eat what you have available, then that's, I think, the best diet possible. And I would just say 70% local, 30% crazy exotic. I ate cashews like an hour ago. They're great. I love them. They're toxic to the planet. It's harmful to the people who harvest them. There's a lot of child slave labor in the cashew market. And those are things I think about, and I'm not afraid to look at those things as well. So it's not an easy answer, and my point is that it's not like anybody. I think biodiversity is the real solution. I don't think anybody should be eating beef 9 times a week. That's horrible. That's harmful. It's toxic to the body. It's toxic to the planet. But again, what about roadkill deer? It is an animal. But it's not shipped from Thailand, so Mother Crunchy says, homie lives near a roadkill and always comes across roadkill. If it's warm and not too damaged, they eat it. I'm vegan and I approve of this message. Lots to think about. As I mentioned, I was vegan for like 6 years. I started to feel really malnourished. I started eating eggs and I was like, all right, if I don't feel any difference, I'm gonna stop. And literally I feel like I got my energy back. And yeah, aside from roadkill, they are vegetarian. I think that's a really good ethical standard. That's probably where I'm going to, minus the idea of hunting a deer once a year, which will literally give me all the fat and all the meat that I would need all year. So then I could carry, because another thing you have to think about is, I want to be able to live in the woods with a backpack. And I've brought jars of coconut oil into the woods in glass. First of all, that could break. Second of all, it doesn't last for shit. It's heavy and it's not a lot of calories. If you take 3 tablespoons a day of coconut, you're not getting enough fat to survive, nor are you getting the varied fats, nor are you getting any cholesterol, which actually cholesterol is really important for your body, for your hormone function. Look at all the people with thyroid problems. That reminds me, on Daniel Vitalis's podcast, there's one podcast called something like The Recovering Vegan, which I found was very insightful. A woman who didn't menstruate, and she was told by her friends that that means she's pure, and I think that's pretty telling. So deer jerky is less weight. So part of what I'm doing is I'm trying to learn how to bug out in an apocalypse, and that's a priority. And so if you're talking about stuffing your backpack full of food and clothes to live in 4 seasons, including the winter, then you really start to count your calories. And let me tell you, oatmeal is heavy, and you could eat 3 to 5 cups of oatmeal a day. Okay, I've done this. Oatmeal and greens. So do you realize, okay, day 1, 3 cups of oatmeal. Day 2, right? 3, 6, 9, 12 cups of oatmeal, right? 15 cups of oatmeal. Wow, you get 5 days in the woods. Do you realize what 15 cups of oatmeal is like? Okay, so your backpack is going to be 90% oatmeal, okay? And it rips right through you. Where if you had fat, if you had condensed fat, and if you had condensed jerky, it weighs nothing, and it's calorically more dense. And so that's another part of the question of if fossil fuel shortages happen, if we continue to see sea levels rising, if we continue to see horrible storms, which we will, we're going to need to become more resilient. And let me tell you, the people who are off the grid, who have a small, animal production, are going to survive a lot better than those who are living off of tofu packaged, grown in China. And that's just part of the reality that we have to look at. How can we survive in the future? I think we're quite on the verge of an environmental catastrophe and a societal catastrophe. We're verging towards some kind of civil war, which is being prodded and poked by media, the federal government, as well as whoever's behind the scenes. The Koch brothers, George Soros, the Murdochs, all of them are invested in pitting us against each other so that we don't focus on who's behind the counter. And so things are going to get pretty intense, in the next 10 years. So that's why I want to have those skills, even if I don't use them. I would rather have those skills and practice those skills at least a couple times than be stuck out in the middle of the woods and pretend like I'm gonna take a stick and go hunt an animal to survive. And in a lot of cases you would need to do that. I think a lot of the people who talk a lot haven't practiced survival in the woods on what they can carry, so try. That's all I would say. Yeah, the military-industrial complex is definitely dangerous. One of the things about the Trump administration is he's actually pretty much taken on military. Now, that's what a totalitarian dictatorship does. A ruler comes along and they appoint military leaders. So pretty much Trump's whole cabinet is military leaders at this point. John Kelly, General Mattis, all these people are, warmongering psychopaths. So we're still in war with Afghanistan. We probably still have troops in Iraq. And we're also now facing the idea of going to war with Korea, North Korea, I should specify, which will bankrupt the United States. I mean, we cannot hold all of those fronts at once. So if that occurs, Houston, Texas, if you know what just happened, the fossil fuel industry just got smacked in the face by this Hurricane Harvey. Who's going to pay for that? We're going to pay for that. The oil companies will fit the cost on gas prices. The oil companies will fit the cost on taxes. We will subsidize the repairing of all the damage that just happened from Hurricane Harvey. The oil refineries from the Keystone XL pipeline, the Dakota Access pipeline, the Pilgrim pipeline, a lot of those were built for getting the tar sands oil in Canada to Houston, Texas, because that's the only refinery that can deal with such horrible crap that they're getting out of the tar sands. It's like crude junk. And so with all the Dakota Access protesting, Houston just got knocked, right? So now there's huge toxin spills, there's environmental catastrophe occurring there. It's not even in the news. So I'll be writing an article. I'm actually getting some help with a couple friends, and we're writing an article all about that. And so those things are going to continue to happen. It's not going to suddenly stop. And so those are also things to consider when you're talking about your diet. Is it sustainable if fossil fuels shut off? Because there's, a possibility at any time. And if you don't think that that's true, right, or if you have illusions, keep studying what's happening in Flint, Michigan. So we're the richest country in the world, and Flint, Michigan still does not have fixed pipelines, okay? We're not even allocating money to Flint, Michigan to fix pipelines. So that tells you how helpful the government will be if you're ever in a catastrophe. Hola Maria, buenos dias, ¿cómo está? That's about the extent of my español. ¿Me hablar español? ¿Te hablar español? I was in Colombia once upon a time, and I realized how bad my Spanish was. So does anybody else have any other questions? Get me all fired up on veganism and the environment. Feel free to ask any questions. My hair. That's my hair. What about my hair? Would you like to know anything? I haven't cut my hair since I was about 18, 19. I'm now 34, so it's been, what's that, about 15 years? Something like that. Can't really count very well. 20, 30? Yeah, 34, it's like 15 years. Just let them go, and don't comb them, and don't use shampoo, conditioner, or products. Nothing with artificial colors or artificial scent. So like Dr. Bronner's works very well. So you can wash your hair whenever you want. And then another thing you can do is wear like a wool hat or a tam, and you like rub it into your head, and that starts to get it all matted. And then from there you just separate it out. Make sure you don't get what's called a rat's nest. So if it all clumps together, it's really hard. Sometimes you have to break it into individual locks depending on how thick you want it. And from there, just let it go. You know, you got to have a crazy funky head for a couple of years, probably 3-4 years, before they actually form and start to look like and feel like dreadlocks. I don't recommend any products or back combing or anything like that. Just let it be natural. That's the whole point. You know, natty dread. So the tree takes its time to grow roots, and when you allow your hair to lock, it holds in energy. So that time is necessary. Let's see. Peaches says, will I ever do a cross-country trip? You know, I was planning on going west for the winter. Still not sure what I'll do this winter. I really feel like I need to hunker down and finish this book I have written, and get it published, and that's going to be like the kind of birth of 2018 in the spring. So I'm either going to come west, do a cross-country tour to the west, starting in the winter or starting in the spring. By then I hope that the van will be insulated, the solar will be all done. I'm going to be working on that in the next coming months, especially in October. I'm going to put in the floors and get shelving in the van, and then I'll be ready to kind of tour around. So if you'd like to help that happen, please consider making a donation or purchasing our herbal goods. You can check out gofundme.com/return-to-nature. You know, we have a whole herbal apothecary on Facebook, Return to Nature Herbal Apothecary. My website, returntonature.us, has herbal goods on there, so please check it out and buy from us, and that helps me to have the funds to come out and travel to you, and then keep teaching and spreading the word and sharing the ways of the wild. Let me see. So P. Garcia says, did I use anything herbal to help stop smoking cigarettes? Yes, I did. So I would roll spliffs of tobacco. If you want to, here's what I did. I took tobacco and herbs and cannabis, and I would start to reduce the amount of tobacco over like a couple months until it was gone, and I was just smoking herb and herbs. And that's how I weaned myself off of smoking tobacco when I was like 22, 23. So if you don't smoke herb, then you could just do that with herbs. So mullein, coltsfoot, peppermint, tulsi, anything like that is really beautiful. So you can just do that, you know, start to reduce the nicotine habit, and start to put less into your system over time. I think that's maybe the best way to do it. Little chipmunk. Thanks for asking. Good question. Does anybody else have any questions? Alright friends, I'm going to disappear now. Thank you all for joining. I did put a new video on, so if anybody wants to see some back episodes of talking crazy shit with Dandelion, my YouTube channel, youtube.com/return-to-nature-skills. My age is 34. You can check that out. Return to Nature Skills on Facebook, and I post a lot of episodes like this called Foragers broadcasts. So see y'all soon. Namaste. Many blessings. Vaya con Dios, which means go with God, be with God.